Hello, I'm Dave, and tonight, on behalf of Playthrough Board Games, I would like to walk you through a game called Jaipur. Jaipur is a two-player strategy trading card game in which you and one opponent compete to gain the Maharaja's favor. In order to gain the Maharaja's favor, you must perform the best in the marketplace as a trader. Let's take a look. In Jaipur, there are a variety of goods tokens, arranged from more to less valuable. Let's take a look at each of these goods and describe their value. First, we will look at jewels. Jewels are one of the more valuable goods. Jewels start out with a value of 7 and depreciate as you sell jewels. So they go down from 7 to 5 and ultimately remain at 5. Once a stack of goods is exhausted, no more of that good can be sold. A next good to look at is gold. Gold is one of the more valuable goods. It starts at a price point of 6, goes down to 5, and also remains at 5. Silver is the third most valuable good. It starts with a price point of 5 and remains there as long as there are silver to be sold. Some of the less valuable goods include silk, which we will take a look at. Silk starts with a price point of 5, drops to 3, which is a drastic drop, then 2, then 1. So it starts and ends generally lower than the more valuable goods. Another less valuable good is spices. Again, spices starts at 5, then drops to 3, then 2, and ultimately ends at 1. Leather is the last less valuable good. Leather starts at 4, drops to 3, then 2, and then 1, ultimately staying at 1 for quite some time. So that's an overview of the goods tokens. Next we will look at bonus tokens, and then we will be ready to watch a little bit of a playthrough of Jaipur. In addition to the goods chips, there are also bonus chips. Let's take a look at the different types of bonus chips. Players will receive a bonus for trading in 3 of a kind, 4 of a kind, or 5 of a kind. These bonuses values are mysterious until the game is scored at the end of each round. So for example, if I were to trade in 3 gems in exchange for money, I would take the top 3 gems tokens, and also I would receive the top bonus token from the 3 card bonus stack that would be scored at the end of a round, when I would reveal it and discover that I had netted 3 bonus points for my trade. There are, as I mentioned, 4 and 5 card bonuses. So the other bonus token here is for the player who has the most camels in his or her herd at the end of a round. This token always nets the player 5 bonus points. Now that we've looked at the bonus tokens, let's actually dive into the gameplay itself. The setup for Jaipur looks like this. At the beginning of the game, 3 camel cards are placed face up next to the central row trade deck. Then 2 random goods cards are placed face up next to the 3 camel cards. Finally, both players are dealt a hand of 4 cards. This hand is their starting hand and represents the goods that each merchant has at the beginning of the trading session. So, the other things that you will notice are that the tokens are arranged in a row to the left of the central deck. In the middle, we see the bonus tokens for trading in 3, 4, or 5 cards. Below the deck, you see the less valuable goods of silk, spices, and leather, and above the deck we see silver, gold, and jewels, which are the more valuable goods. This is the basic arrangement of the game. After completing a round, you will return to this setup after determining the winner. For the sake of this walkthrough, I will be playing both players, and we will play open-faced hands, even though in the real game players would keep their hands secret from one another. So let's take a look at what each player has here. The player toward the top near the more valuable goods will be player 1. The player toward the bottom near the less valuable goods will be player 2. Let's take a look at player 1's hand and see what he or she has been dealt in this case. So player 1 has 1, 2 leather, 1 camel, and 1 spice. When a player acquires a camel card, this does not count toward his or her hand limit and is placed face up in the player's herd. We will discuss the uses and strategy of camel cards in a few minutes. So, now we know what player 1's hand looks like. Let's take a look at player 2's hand over here. Player 2 has 2 leather, 1 spice, and 1 silver. So, leather would seem to be the hot commodity at this point, even though neither player would know that the other player was holding leather cards. Okay, now that we've introduced the player's hands, we will take a look at a couple of turns of gameplay. Let's have a look at player 1's first turn. On a player's turn, a player may either acquire something from the central row or trade 1 or more goods cards in exchange for money. To trade goods cards, a player simply discards the number of cards he or she wishes to trade and takes the number of chips that correspond to the number of cards that he or she has traded. Note that trades must always take place with cards of the same type. So, for example, player 1 here could not trade both his leather and his spice in the same turn. Looking at the central row, player 1 does not see much that interests him. In this case, there is no leather to acquire, nor are there any spice cards face up in the central row. An option for player 1 is to take all the camels from the central row and put them in his herd, which may be of strategic value later. So that is what player 1 opts to do. This is a risky venture in a sense, since it will give player 2 the option of picking up whatever new cards come out. Let's see what those are. Another set of jewels, yet another set of jewels, and a leather card. So, let's take a look at what player 2 might choose to do on her turn. Player 2 has 2 leather, 1 spice, and 1 silver in her hand. In this case, she notices that there are 2 cards that interest her particularly, namely the leather and the silver in the central row. In order to acquire both of those cards, she would have to place 2 cards in the central row. However, she may acquire 1 card for free to her hand without placing one of her own cards in the central row. This would allow her to get the silver and simply replenish the empty space from the market deck, which is what she chooses to do. Even though the leather is valuable, the silver is more valuable to her, and so she selects the silver. She now has 5 cards in her hand out of a limit of 7. Play returns to player 1. At this point, player 1 sees an opportunity to use his camels to great effect. There are 3 jewel cards in the central row. These gems are of great interest to him because they are very valuable. However, he would also like to keep his leather cards and not have to place them in the central row. So, he looks at his camel herd and notes that he has 4 camels, which would allow him to take up to 4 goods in the central row and simply fill in their spaces with camels, which is sort of like spamming the central row with cards that do not help his opponent necessarily. So that's what he chooses to do, is he will put all 4 camels in, taking the 3 jewel or gemstone cards, raising his hand size to 6 now, and he will also take one of the leather cards, which puts him at his hand limit of 7 cards. In order to collect more cards, he would have to discard a card from his hand. It is now player 2's turn again, and she sees this as a good opportunity to take all the camels from the central row. The strategic value in doing so is that player 1 can no longer collect anything from the central row without having to give something up. So, getting a bunch of new cards into the middle row will not likely adversely affect player 2 and will not likely help player 1. So we flip up 4 new cards, a gold, another set of jewels or gems, another camel, and a silk. So this marks the end of player 2's turn. Player 1 is now interested in making the first trade of the game. He has 3 jewels or gemstones and would like to begin the process of earning money. So he takes these 3 cards and places them in a discard pile next to the central deck, in exchange for which he will receive 7, 14, and a 5, so 19 points, and also the mystery 3-card bonus token, which he will be able to look at the end of the round. Play proceeds in this matter until one of 2 things happens. Either 3 goods stacks are emptied of tokens, or the central deck is emptied of cards. When the round does end, points are tallied, and a token of the Maharaja's favor is awarded to the player who has the most points. In other words, the player who earned the most money will be named the most successful trader. Whoever earns 2 of these tokens first is deemed the winner overall. Even if player 1 or 2 was having a bad round, he or she could make up the difference in a consecutive round, which is one of the things that I consider to be a strength of this game. Hopefully you have enjoyed this introduction to Jaipur. If it seems interesting, go check it out. It's by GameWorks. I found it at my friendly local game store. You might too. Thank you for watching our video.